In this video, we're going to discuss when does coercive and controlling behaviour really reach the criminal standard and need to be investigated by the police and could end up in criminal charges. Um, I'm James Maguire at Maguire Family Law, and with me again, I've got Cecilia Goodwin, who's a specialist criminal law practitioner. And over the summer, we had a survey of 2,000 people looking at different areas of coercive controlling behaviour. And with that, naturally, we've got some statistics. So just looking at some of those from a general point of view, the feedback was that 36% of that survey, so more than a third of respondents, didn't actually know that coercive and controlling behaviour was actually now a criminal crime. Um, and of the 2,000 people surveyed, 3% of women and 5% of men admitted that they'd actually been the perpetrator of a coercive and controlling relationship. Um, I'd be interested to know, Cecilia, from your perspective, and I can tell you from my family law perspective, but when does it come on your radar? When do you see people reporting this to the police?
I think it's changing a little bit more now because I think there is starting to be a bit more awareness as to the behaviors that could result in, being investigated for coercive control. Historically, though, most of the time that I've ended up having to represent someone in the police station, it's usually at the end of a relationship, breakdown of a relationship, acrimonious, nobody's getting along. And one party may then decide, actually, I'm going to the police because I believe that I was in a coercive controlling situation. Sometimes, a lot of the time for me, I see it where there are family law proceedings attached. So people are fighting over custody of the children, ownership of the marital assets or the home. And then this tends to rear its head, really. But I think sometimes in my experience in some of the cases I've had, I have seen it being weaponized by people. So reporting it with a view to either making their case in the family court stronger or getting somebody out of the house, or for example, where, somebody wants to get their own back on someone.
Right. Okay. Interesting. And I know from my perspective that it'll normally raise its head in terms of an allegation to the police, but when someone is at the end of the relationship and it might be that they feel that they've now got the strength, or it may be that that is the final straw through whether through women's aid support there or friends and family. It's otherwise, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that we've talked about in other videos where they're just stay in the relationship, and this sort of coercive or controlling behavior is a pattern, it's a repeated pattern, and it erodes people over time. Yeah, conversely, I also acknowledge that people can trivialize these words and
Yeah.
a narcissist and use that, which has its own problems and perhaps for their own ends in terms of removing someone from the
Yeah,
house, that they
absolutely.
may think that the family court, and particularly when we're looking at children proceedings and where the children are going to live or spend time with the other parent, or the financial proceedings, that they will be stronger if there are
Yeah.
allegations before the court.
Absolutely. And I think I would just jump in and say, in respect of the family proceedings, so for you, in your world, things take a bit longer. Whereas if you want something immediate, how can you get anything done immediately when it comes to any offences? You report it to the police
Absolutely.
and they're there straight away. So, you might not be able to wait until you have the hearing that's been listed to decide who's going to remain in the house or not. This, unfortunately, I've seen this being a route that's used by other people to get immediate.
Mhm. I mean, certainly we will recommend to our clients where they are at risk.
Yeah.
Could be of violence or threats of violence, intimidation, pestering, harassing behaviour, not only to seek the protection of the family court, but I must admit, over the years, that that protection isn't as immediate as it used to be. You used to be able to go in the same day
Really?
and get an injunction order. Now you might be able to, but you might have to wait a couple of days.
Right.
That could put someone at risk.
Yeah.
So yeah, the police is always the first port of call.
Yeah.
I mean, other statistics will show us, if I just read from my notes, that, in the year ending March 2023, there were 43,000 offences of coercive and controlling behaviour recorded by the police in England. And that was up from the previous year of 41,000. But in the year to 2021, it was 33 or 34,000. So there's certainly a lot more of this types of behaviours being reported to the police.
And I think there's many reasons for that. It could be, for example, the sort of topics we've discussed, where it's an end of a relationship, or, someone is, using it for their own ends or whatever they want to do in the end. But I think also it's more about awareness. And I think what's happening is that more people are now, whether you're the accused or whether you are, the complainant, the victim in the situation, I think on both sides, there is now more awareness in relation to what sorts of behaviors can amount to coercive controlling behavior. And on the one hand, I think that's a good thing, because I think it enables people who might ordinarily be behaving in ways that fall foul of this legislation to take a look at themselves and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, or maybe it's not okay. Right. And it could be that it's learned behavior. It could be that that's just how they are, And we've talked in other, topics in terms of characteristics of people. I mean, if somebody's controlling and then, they're naturally controlling and then they end up in this situation, could be a bit tricky. But also for those who are in these situations, who are, for example, your clients, not necessarily mine, who are, saying, look, I've been in this situation, I feel I am being coerced and controlled. They are now understanding the red flags, and they're understanding things that could, again, result in someone being arrested. And they're speaking up, they are reporting, which is a positive thing, I guess.
Well, I suppose the difficult question that I put to you is, how do you actually prove coercive and controlling behaviour, at least to the criminal standard?
Yeah, so obviously the criminal standard is quite a high standard in that, jury must be sure. Some people might know it as reasonable doubt, beyond reasonable doubt. In coercive controlling situations, in terms of cases, it's not just one behavior that will give rise to a conviction or, even an arrest. So we're looking at things like a pattern. We're looking at continuous, persistent types of behavior that build a picture. And one of the things, if we're talking about coercive behavior on the second limit, which is to do with how it makes the victim feel. So they, how this behavior has made them feel, it must have serious harm to them. You want as many different instances where you can say, look, this is the pattern that shows what I've been going through. And that then builds a picture. But at the same time, against that backdrop is, for example, if I think, some people say perpetrator, but let's say if the accused is saying, look, I was doing all of this because that was what was in the best interest of that person. And then again, we have to look at the wider picture of what things were you doing and why were they in the best interest of that person, whether it's to protect them, whether that again could mean that somebody has a defense in respect of these sorts of allegations. But I think every case has to be taken on its own facts and its own merits.
Yeah.
And it has to be looked at carefully.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because there's no two situations that are the same. And interesting, you say, you say this, and that the patterns of behaviour, because I'll act for all sorts of different people, and certainly where I'll come across a client and they feel that they're at risk. And one of the things that I will recommend, just as a basic point, is keep a note, keep a diary
Yeah.
of everything that they feel is relevant.
Yeah.
Certainly, if we need to do a statement, we need to be on it in terms of dates, times, what was said by whom, who else was there, and it just helps them piece it together. It might actually help them from a sort of therapeutic perspective in terms of, well, this is actually what's going on, and it's on paper, and to seek additional support
Yeah.
and assistance from other agencies, charities, therapy itself. But equally, there is a lot of people who feel that they could actually be accused
Yeah.
of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And they're in a house, and it is a bit volatile, and inevitably it can be, emotionally charged when people are going through a separation or a divorce. But they feel like it's only going to take someone to make an allegation, and I'm going to be out of the house. And what should I do to protect myself? And equally, I will also say, you need to prepare a note, a diary, a log of what's happening, and to remove yourself almost from this situation,
That's
because you can get arrested.
absolutely. And that's exactly what I would say in respect of people that if I'm representing someone, spot on, keep a log, because you never know when you may need it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.